Hello, I'm Amanda Chipman, the Emergency Management Coordinator at the Iowa Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship. Today, I'm going to talk to you about the government response for a foreign animal disease outbreak. The first thing that's likely to happen when a foreign animal disease is diagnosed is the national movement standstill. For the first 72 hours, all new movements of swine in the United States stop. All movements of swine that are in progress when a national movement standstill is announced, this means that they're on the road in transit to their destination, then they should be able to continue, but no new movements can start. Other movements, like vehicles and equipment, are highly discouraged during a national movement standstill unless they relate directly to the health of the herd. After 72 hours have passed, the national standstill may be lifted for movements of swine if you're outside of the control area. So the goal here is that we find the virus and we limit the spread as much as we can. Keys to a more successful standstill include our premises identification number database is up to date. This database is what we use to contact people in case of an emergency, like a foreign animal disease. We need to know where the virus is and where the virus is not. And so we need to have the best coordination of testing possible and collaboration with producers and veterinarians to find any farms that are not connected to the infected farm. To prepare for finding those connections to the infected farm, we will be looking at movement records. In Iowa, producers would need to provide records of any movement that could have carried disease onto or off of a swine facility for at least the last 30 days. This can take some time to gather, and that's why it's key to be prepared ahead of time. Pictured here is a document from the IDALS website that prioritizes the records that need to be reviewed in order of the highest priority to the lower priority. Some of the examples of the high priorities would include live animals, animal products, rendering of carcasses, regular employees, and any history of international travel. Movement restriction of susceptible livestock species is one strategy for the control and containment of foreign animal disease during a U.S. outbreak. 72-hour movement standstill of susceptible species and animal products have been recommended by the USDA during state and national exercises. During this time, regulatory control areas around the infected premises will be designated. The infected, suspect, and contact farms will be managed under the guidance in the various red books or response plans that Iowa has. The standstill will be lifted for those outside the control area, and those inside the control area who are not infected will need to do surveillance testing and permitted movements, which we'll talk about a little later in the presentation. Let's first focus on the infected premises and the steps that they will need to take. Our goal is to find the disease as fast as possible. And so one way you can help us do this is to report any suspicious clinical signs to your local veterinarian or directly to the Iowa Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship, or IDALS. If we think it is likely to be a foreign animal disease, we will send out an FADD, or a foreign animal disease diagnostician, to investigate, take samples for diagnostics, and start looking at where the disease could have come from or may have gone through trace in and trace out links. The initial findings of foreign animal disease investigation. So the FADD will discuss those findings with the USDA's area veterinarian in charge and our state veterinarian here in Iowa. We will then put a quarantine on the premises so that nothing moves on or off. And then they will determine what priority of samples need to be sent to the foreign animal disease diagnostic laboratory. If samples need to be tested, IDALS and USDA work with the producer to get them sent in duplicate. So samples are set to first they're sent to Iowa State Diagnostic Lab, and then the other set will be sent to Plum Island off the coast of New York, which is a USDA lab.
Once a site is positive, we will assign a case manager to help them step through the process they must take in order to get back to business. They will be quarantined. And now the goal is not biosecurity, keeping the disease out, but it's biocontainment, keeping the disease from spreading to other farms. To find where the disease has gone and where it could have spread, the producer will need to help us with understanding all the trace in and trace out connections that this farm has. And in the upcoming slides, I'll talk more about indemnity paperwork that has to be completed and the process of depopulation and disposal. On our website, we have resources to help with biocontainment. Here are examples of resources to build a decontamination line on your farm. There's a video and a step-by-step guide of how to do it, along with a supply list of what things that you can buy at your local Menards or Lowe's. The indemnity paperwork needs to be complete before any depopulation occurs on the farm. The USDA will only pay for live animals at the time of the paperwork being completed. To find more information on indemnity, you can look at the USDA African Swine Fever website. The easiest way to find this is just to Google USDA ASF, and you should be able to find it. On this page, you can find an overview of the finance and administrative procedures, as well as the appraisal and indemnity request forms. There's also a herd plan template, and this lays out the way that you're going to depopulate and dispose and decontaminate on your farm. Here's a table of the American Veterinary Medical Association approved euthanasia methods. But when it comes to depopulation, we're looking at a rapid destruction of population of animals. The goal is to stop the virus as fast as possible. So live animals are little virus factories. So we want them to be dead as fast as possible so they're not spreading disease. So sometimes the regular methods of euthanasia are not going to be very useful on your farm when you have a lot of animals. So here some methods are listed on the slide. Some of them are the same as the euthanasia methods, but there's also some that are able to be used only in constrained circumstances, like ventilation shutdown plus. We don't really have great options, and so research has been ongoing to find different methods that might be able to be used during an outbreak situation. A couple examples would be nitrogen foam or water-based foam. All of these methods have pros and cons, and it's important for you to develop a plan on your farm. IDALS worked with the Center for Food Security and Public Health at Iowa State University Veterinary Medical College and to write this summary of depopulation equipment. It includes equipment that was existing or under development as of December 2021. The summary includes a general summary of depopulation methods for swine and systems that have been used. Some examples are CO2 trailers and chambers, V-belt restrainers with electrocution only or electrocution followed by captive bolt stunning, nitrogen foam, and ventilation shutdown plus. Pros and cons are listed in the various tables for in this paper. If you'd like to see a copy of the paper, please contact me. In most cases during the FAD outbreak, IDALS will require on-site disposal of animal carcasses and other associated materials. All on-site methods must first be exhausted before IDALS would consider allowing off-site disposal. IDALS and the Iowa DNR must approve the method of disposal. The owner of the animals disposes of them, though. Now let's look at what happens in the control area around the infected premises. So some ongoing actions after the confirmed positive, we're going to continue tracing those ins and outs, trying to figure out where the disease came from and where it could have went. And we're going to be entering data into EMERS, the Emergency Management Response System. We're also determining control areas around the infected premises, and I'll talk about those in the next slide. And then we're also coordinating a lot of surveillance testing. So all the sites within the control area will need to be tested, as well as those contact premises that have direct links to the infected premises. So once an FAD is diagnosed, a control area is set up around the infected premises. This can be done based on a presumptive positive or confirmed positive tests from the lab, clinical signs, case definitions, or international standards. The infected zone is set up around the infected premises. For swine, like African swine fever, classical swine fever, and foot and mouth disease, this infected zone is 3 kilometers from the perimeter of the infected premises. Then outside of the infected zone is the buffer zone, and this can be different dependent on the disease. So for ASF, it's 2 kilometers, which makes the total control area 5 kilometers. And for FMD and CSF, the buffer zone is 7 kilometers, making the whole control area 10 kilometers. Outside the control area is the free area, which includes a surveillance zone, usually 10 kilometers around the control area. And then the free zone includes all the other areas that are not in the control area. Contact premises are premises with susceptible animals that may have been exposed to the foreign animal disease, either directly or indirectly, including but not limited to the exposure to animals, animal products, fomites, or people from infected premises. Contact premises would be subject to network-based controls, and I'll talk about that in a little later. Suspect premises are premises under investigation due to the presence of susceptible animals reporting to have the clinical signs compatible with the foreign animal disease. This is intended to be a short-term designation while they're under investigation. At-risk premises are premises that have susceptible animals, but none of those susceptible animals have clinical signs compatible with the foreign animal disease. Premises objectively demonstrate that it's not an infected prem, a contact prem, or a suspect prem. At-risk premises may seek to move susceptible animals or products within the control area by permit, but only at-risk premises are eligible to become the monitored premises. Monitored premises, they are premises that objectively demonstrate that they're not infected, a contact, or a suspect. Monitored premises meet a set of defined criteria, and some of that includes testing. And so they are able to move by permit outside of the control area. Network-based controls are designed to be used in combination with traditional control areas to assist in limiting the spread of African swine fever. Unlike traditional control areas that focus on just the local spread surrounding the infected premises, network-based controls directly address movements and its role in disease transmission. As a result, additional cases can be identified quickly and instant resources can be utilized more efficiently. This graphic illustrates an example of an epidemiological network where tracing from one infected premises identified these 3 other contact sites. And they will require testing to determine if they are positive or negative, and then control areas will only be set up around the positive sites. So in a control area, we have the infected premises that go through a process where they're quarantined, they have biocontainment, and they have depopulation and disposal. All other premises in the control area will also be quarantined. They will have surveillance testing done to make sure that they are not positive, and then they will be able to move by permit if they're a monitored premises. In Iowa, if a positive test is found, IDALS has the authority to quarantine the infected premises and premises with susceptible species in the control area. So we can quarantine both that an affected quarantine, infected premises, and then also the not known to be infected quarantine would be all other premises. Movements are by permit only during a foreign animal disease outbreak for a few reasons. The first is to prevent the disease spread. Criteria needed to meet that will ensure that movement is as safe as possible. So for an example, there will be testing involved before you can get a movement permit. Second reason is to have movement traceability that has immediate and long-term impact. Initially, if a movement occurs and infection is found, there are records to trace to the other premises. It also provides transparencies to others in the industry, other states, and the public that disease control practices are in place. Long term, in order to regain trade status, the US needs to be able to demonstrate to other countries that the outbreak is managed under control and eventually show disease freedom. Here's an example of a permit, and it's on our website, of swine moving to slaughter. And so some of the items on the permit, the first step in the process is to make sure that you have the traceability information necessary for a movement permit. So the PIN of the origin and the destination is key. You also want details on what you're moving. Next, your premises needs to be designated as a monitored premises to qualify for a movement permit. Permit will not be issued to infected, suspect, or contact premises. And it will take records to ensure that there are no dangerous contacts that are being moved. Since there are susceptible species on the premises in the control area, surveillance testing will need to be done to further define the premises status. Also, the destination premises need to be willing to accept the movement from the control area. In this case of swine moving to slaughter, the packing plant has to be agreeable to accept those pigs. So a summary of our permit, samples are collected by either an accredited veterinarian or an approved sampler, someone who has gone through the certified swine sample collector training program. All movements under this permit are going to be recorded into EMERS. And so for an example, you can have multiple movements on one permit. You can have 30 days of feed movement for one permit and move feed 4 times for an example. But all of those movements have to be recorded and turned into IDALS. And the permit will be canceled with presumed positive test results or any increase in daily mortality or clinical signs that look like the foreign animal disease. For more information on permitting, you can check out our webinar on our website. It's called Control Areas, Secure Pork Supply and the Permitting Process in Iowa. Thanks for listening.